Welcome back to another episode of the Modernist Guide. I'm back after a long week of nothing, mostly because videos screwed up when traveling and trying to find a place to record, and the recording didn't work, and so this is another attempt basically. So it's really just playing catch up for holiday season, anyways, and what better than all the shows and films that have come out over the Thanksgiving season to start, and namely the big one, I think, as far as like buzz, good or bad, it's Cowboy Bebop on Netflix. It is a live action reimagining, less than a reboot or a remake or whatever you want to call it, of the 1998 anime series by Shinichiro Watanabe. And honestly, I don't really want to get into the anime discourse. I've watched anime my whole life. I love anime, but a lot of the things that anime fans love or hate is just so obnoxiously visceral, and there's no point in being that angry. Cowboy Bebop, the anime, will still exist as is, and if you love it, that's perfect. And if you hate the live action, that's fine. And if you've seen the live action, you should watch the anime for sure. So the problem here is I think you can look at the series, the live action series as a whole by itself and still see the glaring problems. I think the acting is pretty good. John Cho is a really good version of this Spike. I know there's a lot of fear and rumor going around that it was very Deadpool esque because I think IGN wrote a stupid ass article or screen rant. And whoever wrote it, using the word Deadpool is a bad idea. It's not Deadpool esque. If that is one of the things keeping you from watching the live action series, it's not Deadpool esque. But it is, however, very modern in its language. The dialogue is easily the worst part of the series, so if you can't handle any characters, whether you know the anime or not, but if you just can't handle the idea of just people casually saying nutbag or dickwad, or I think at one point they say something like they've got us by the sack hairs, it's, yeah, you can ignore that because it's not good. It's not. But the actual acting is very good, pretty much for everybody all around for what they're given. And, I hate to say if this wasn't Cowboy Bebop, it would be such a more earnest concept, but I think it would be. But John Cho does a really good job. Mustafa Shakir does a good job with what he's given as Jet, and I think a lot of the mannerisms are really good. But how he's characterized and what they do with his character isn't that great. And then Danielle Pinda does her best with basically not being any reminiscent of Faye. They've kind of turned her into a quirky lesbian, but like for one episode. And they try to give her an emotional backstory, but I'm not sure if it works. I don't know what they're going to do with it. It's one of the most like original and driving points away from the anime. So they are, half and half trying to have their cake and eat it too. But they sacrifice pretty much all the nuance. All the noir feelings of the original is gone. They completely took it out. Not butchering, not gutting, just erased noir. There is no noir here. Just because there's jazz in it doesn't make this a noir series, and there's nothing noir about it. They've replaced it with kind of hacky pulp kind of stuff. Very like a la a slightly less frantic version of, a Tarantino film. But also, I can't help but think of Joss Whedon's Firefly. I always thought when watching Firefly, regardless of if it was, good or bad, that Joss saw like bits and pieces of Cowboy Bebop and he took it and made it his own into this. So while you can see similarities, that it's not necessarily an influence as much as like just random ideas that he used to fuel Firefly. And I think here they did that where instead of paying more attention to the style and beats of the anime series, they look at a live action example, Firefly, but only bits and pieces, and then kind of remolded it. So it kind of feels like a rendition of a rendition, and that's pretty rough. And I think about 40% of the show is pretty good or fun, funny, interesting, might have something. I don't know, there's just so much clunkiness to it. The dialogue's not good, but the acting is good at the same time. It's very interesting trying to be both schlocky and serious, and it doesn't completely work. As much as I think Mustafa did a great job as Jet, they kind of turned him into a deadbeat divorced dad. Like he tries really hard for his kid, but he still fails, and he looks kind of impotent. That's not what Jet was then, but I think as a general character where he's supposed to be like the leader and the one that everyone kind of depends on, that's not a good characteristic to have. John Cho is really good as Spike Spiegel. Pretty much, he is a little stoic and kind of a smartass. He's not as mysterious and charming, but he still works. For people who don't know anything about it, Spike is once a just a hitman, a killer for a hired organization. Then he falls in love with a girl, tries to redeem himself. They think they kill him, and he's been alive this whole time. Now it's past catching up with him, that kind of thing. But the absolute worst thing they did was, even though these were probably two of the most underdeveloped characters that were important to the progression of the main story in the anime, Vicious and Julia are kind of just butchered. They're awful. Because where Vicious was this quiet, scary, mysterious, violent psychopath in the anime, here he's just this loud, neurotic, violent thug. And it's just the subtleties should be obvious between someone who's menacing and someone who's just belligerent. And belligerence doesn't work here. They've become a side plot that you see in every episode instead of this mysterious past that follows Spike that we get hints of every now and then leads to the ultimate ending of the series. But instead, we see them all the time. We basically get them as regular main characters instead of plot points. Julia was basically just a love interest plot point. She was, I guess, fridged in a way, or she was a plot device. She wasn't really a woman with a lot of identity or anything like that. But what she did was create a driving force. She's not even the driving force here as much, just like flashback or whatever. But Vicious, he I don't know, it's just really bad. He's not interesting. He's not likable. He's like, they took his name way too literally. There's no nuance. There's no mystery. It's all out in the open, and he's boring and violent. And you can completely erase anything about the anime. Like, don't even think about the anime, and just like spoilers for this, because this is like the last 20 minutes of the season finale, because they're gonna try to stretch it as much as they can, and maybe, hopefully, they will figure out new original ideas if they're gonna really keep it on that long. I don't know. But so at the end, spoilers again. Instead of like anyone important dying, Julia kind of, who has been abused by Vicious this whole time, so she's complete domestic abuse and destroyed by toxic masculinity, has decided that she's against everyone and hates everyone, and it's everyone's fault that she is like now evil, I guess, and she turns on Vicious, but she turns on Spike too, and shoots him, and he goes falling out of the big scene in the church, just like in the anime, but it's Julia instead of Vicious now, and she's like going to take over the organized crime syndicate situation, kind of made herself the main bad guy now. And that doesn't make any sense. It really, really doesn't. Like, so the way it's set up is like she's got Vicious trapped in a basement or whatever, and that just, the whole setup, it feels like at some point she's gonna get like Cersei level Game of Thrones evil bitch, I guess, for lack of a better word, because that's just how she's written and not good. But it really feels like Spike's gonna like free Vicious, and Vicious is gonna redeem himself, and they're gonna team up to take out Julius. That's what it feels like. It's a bad, bad idea. No matter what, even like, you don't need to know anything about the anime to feel like that's a bad fucking idea. But yeah, ultimately, I wasn't like upset or distraught, but there weren't a lot of good choices. So while the cast seemed to really enjoy themselves and do the best they could, and some of the reinvention, it is going to maybe do something for it eventually, I'm just not feeling it that much. I'd definitely say it's a 4 out of 10. I can't even like recommend this for anybody. Not really, because I think it's just too clunky on its own. It sacrifices a lot just as regular writing. It doesn't have to be a reinvention or an adaptation at all to see the problems. It's probably gonna get season two. Maybe they'll take all this criticism because everyone's got pretty much the same kind of criticism for it, pretty much. So hopefully they're gonna be okay with it and fix things because they have a chance to if they want to or not, and they'll just flounder more until it's canceled, I guess. And it sucks because I wanted to be really optimistic. I liked the idea of it, especially way back in 2008 when it was possibly going to be Keanu Reeves in a movie. So the fact that it's going this way, it just sucks that optimism can't win out. But yeah, it's not that great. That's pretty much it for this one. Thank you. Like, share, subscribe, and if not, as always, thank you for listening. Have a good night.